Hey everyone, Tyler here at The Movie Beat, back with another video update on The Call. I just want to start by first saying I really have enjoyed this past week of discussion and thinking about the different explanations or some of the logical inconsistencies, some of our unanswered questions in the comments with you all. Really appreciate it. It's really helped my enjoyment of this film. And for those that still want to keep this discussion going, I really I just want to say thank you for keeping up with me on this. And this is definitely going to be my last video on The Call for at least quite a while. So this video, I want to give just some final thoughts on one of the aspects of the film that has to do with deaths and disappearances, as well as give you my final interpretation of the film's ending, and then an updated score for the film overall. So let's get into it. This one's gonna have a lot of spoilers again, so if you guys wanna go back and check out my review reaction video or my first ending explained video, I do have two other videos on The Call. One is more about the distortions in reality that we can see through the changing, the evolution of the house in the film. And the last one is more of some of the film's strange logic that I still cannot square up until this video. So let's get into it. So this one, I want to talk a little bit about my opinion on the deaths and disappearances in this film based on some of the interactions I've had with you or other people online about what that actually means. So first of all, I think all of the reality distortions that we as the viewers do get to experience in this film do come through the perspective of the lead character Soyeon, played by Park Shin-hye. So regardless of what is happening to other people, she is always like staying in one place. So she does not necessarily move or just in her physical location based on any past alterations, which is kind of interesting, but I guess you have to, that was a decision made by the filmmakers. So it seems like when somebody disappears in the present time in 2019, which is most of the film, that would mean that there was a death in the past, that they no longer exist. And I think that is a lot of the interpretation in this film, that's like a key rule. If you disappear, that means you're dead. And that appears to be the case in several circumstances. For instance, when the 2019 father comes back to life, when he appears, so that means maybe he get real life, his disappearance in the car does coincide with his murder in 1999. However, there are a couple other disappearances that are a little bit, they make me think a little bit differently about this rule of appearing or disappearing means death for sure, based on everything happening from Soyeon's perspective. So, of course, also the Strawberry Man, when he's murdered, his future self is gone, and his mom, or Soyeon's mom and dad, have no knowledge of him whatsoever because he was pretty much out before they moved in, so they would have never have met him. So that makes sense too, that he would disappear and their memory of him would also go. But let's remember, in the first timeline in 2019, Soyeon's mother is in the hospital and she's suffering from that brain tumor that she needs an operation on. So I'm just hypothetically thinking, within the rules outlined of the story in this film, if our main character Soyeon had been in the hospital with her mother at the same time on her father's death anniversary, when Jungsook from 1999, the villain in this one, does her thing and gets her father to avoid exploding or dying in that fire caused by the home gas valve explosion that happened. Soyeon is at her home when this happens, and the house changes around her into this beautiful mansion, and her hair gets longer, and she's like, oh my God, and she runs outside to that big like greenhouse where her mother and father are working, like, and they're like doing their gardening and farming or whatever. So Soyeon's mother is no longer in the hospital and she is there. So that past changed her mother's future as well. So if, let's just hypothetically think, if Soyeon was in the hospital with her mother at this moment, I'm guessing that means her mother would have The hospital would have warped a little bit. Maybe it might have looked a little bit different. The patients might have changed, but especially the bed that her mother was in. Would she have just disappeared from that bed because she's no longer sick and in the hospital, and she would have reappeared in the greenhouse where they were gardening? So if she saw her mother disappear in that bed, based on what I've heard in some of the comments, that would mean her mother died. Well, clearly, all it means is her mother's future was altered, so she was not in that location anymore in 2019. She wasn't necessarily dead. Now, the reason I'm saying this is because if we are to keep with the explanation in the end that right before 2020, at that moment, 2020, 2019, Jungsook is about to kill Soyeon when she's cowering in that room, and she closes her eyes and then she opens them and Jungsook is gone. A lot of people are saying, well, she had to have died. Well, what if the past had altered in a way that just no longer required her to be in that present location anymore in 2019? Just the same way that her mother poofed from her bed into the greenhouse. Why couldn't the future Jungsook have poofed from the house? She's no longer in that house. She no longer moved into that house. That house is gone now because of whatever happened in the past. It's kind of beat up and whatnot. She just maybe was she in another location at that time. So that's kind of the final unanswered question, but my final kind of interpretation of the deaths and disappearances, because it's all based on Soyeon's perspective. She could have just moved to a different location because it seems like people in her life can move around, disappear and reappear. It could also signify a death, of course. So let's remember, this film is like to the second lined up between 1999 and 2019, and so there is this weird time in which Soyeon from the future in 2019 is calling Jungsook from the past in 1999 when her family and herself, so her younger self, her mother, and her father, are visiting the house for the first time, like November 22nd or so. And Soyeon from the future has knowledge of her father's future death. And there is this moment that just because her father died in the future, he's still alive at this point in time. And so she is delivering that knowledge to try and save him, which she is successful doing because Jungsook was able to avert that disaster from happening. In the exact same way, when 1999 Jungsook calls and contacts her future self in 2019, so once again, with both timelines, 1999 and 2019 being linked to the second, changing the past at that moment when Jungsook is no longer caught with the knife, she now, at that time in the past, has a future in 2019. So based on the structure of the film, it does seem like the 2019 area does have more of the magical stuff going on with the warped sort of realities, the house changing, people disappearing, reappearing. The past is just sort of events taking place. There isn't any sort of magic going on other than doing something or not doing something based on Soyeon's memory or historical record of the past. So if somebody has not died yet, based on that time continuum in 1999, whatever possible future is leading them to the current reality in 2019, shall be. So if 2019 Jungsook is not caught, she will exist in that house. So the 1999 aspect of her looming death still has not happened yet. So the reality is fixed at Soyeon's moment in 2019. So therefore, she can be alive at the same time her younger self in 1999 is alive, even though there is certainly a impending death happening with, or the mother policeman encounter. And so there's definitely a little bit of magic worked into that, but I think in that way, there was that really small window of time, just sheer luck. She got that call and was able to avert a potential disaster. So this brings me to my final interpretation of the ending and how I think it's going to best suit me thinking about moving forward when it comes to rewatches and things like that. So let's get to the climax of this film when the house transforms into the murder home after Jungsook is given, 1999 Jungsook is given the information regarding the knife that would have eventually put her in jail. When she's able to burn that or get rid of it and never get caught, the transformation of the house that Soyeon is in at that time turns into the murder home, the 2020 or 2019 version of Jungsook's house, because she lives there forever. She was never forced to move out. She's not in jail anymore. And obviously, Soyeon's family never moved in. So when younger Jungsook is continuing to call, hey, did you check on it? Did you make sure? Did they not find me? Are you going to ensure that I'm not getting caught and spending the rest of my life in jail? All of a sudden, there is a future free 2019 Jungsook who's able to intercept or to receive that call because Soyeon had ran out for a second and she's not really there. And that is the moment that 2019 Jungsook is able to tell her younger self about the warning. She's able to deliver the warning of the policeman and Soyeon's mother about to arrive. And we do not see that further until the ending credits. So the actual sequence that we see play out in the film when Soyeon's mother and the policeman arrive, the battle that ensues, the falling over the balcony, is actually the history that was averted. Just like Soyeon's father getting burned in the fire, that history was averted. Just like the history of the shaman mother getting arrested, just like that was averted. We actually got to see this history play out where Jungsook died. That actually was avoided based on the end credit of younger Jungsook, 1999, going up to the door, showing that eyeball of knowledge of having already received the call, ready to prepare to take out the cop, the mother, whatever the battle that was going to ensue, so be it, even if it looks like it's not going to work out like her future self predicted. With the phone being left on and all the information she was able to get, she was able to survive that night. So that is the reality that played out, the survival based on the information learned. If that phone call never came, we saw obviously what kind of an outcome that would have. So I do very much like the filmmaker showing us the hopeful outcome of Soyeon reuniting with her mother in that graveyard. And I like that visual representation of a positive outcome. And I like also how they contrast it with what they are going to, what I think they are saying what really happened with this tacked on, whatever you want to call it, ending of that phone call coming through, looking through the peephole, signaling that reality that we witnessed as the film and we all thought was real was actually the reality averted. So Jungsook is the winner at the end of this one, and I think it's awesome. And when we see the future Jungsook and she's got the scar on her neck, she's got the scar on her cheek, none of that is really explained based on the 1999 Jungsook, her death scene. She was not really slashed in her neck. She wasn't slashed on her face. So I don't believe that Jungsook actually survived to the future. I think the one that we saw die, fall over the balcony, died. The one that we saw lived, we do not know what that battle looked like. That was the battle that happened behind the scenes that we were not privy to. But we can assume that Soyeon, her mother, is a fighter, and we saw that in the original reality that was averted. She fought back as hard as you can fight back. She caught that knife with her hand. She came out of the room, from death almost, it seemed like, to tear and take younger Jungsook over the railing. So we know she's a fighter. I'm going to imagine that Soyeon's mother put up a crazy, epic fight for the ages that left Jungsook with the scar on her neck, the scar on her cheek, and those are the battle wounds that we do see carry over into her 2019 and 2020 self. The Jungsook that is waking up from the floor, recovering from that epic battle with the mother, that I'm going to assume from my interpretation that Jungsook was able to kill along with that policeman, that the younger Soyeon was never allowed to escape, and she probably ended up having to grow up there under Jungsook's rule. And that's how we see the 2019, well, it's technically the 2020 Soyeon, her reality just warps into a past that never gave her that life with her mother that she grew up with, and she maybe has been growing up in this house her whole life, and we see her being tormented in that chair. Now, some people will say, oh, the basement where the chair is, that looks like the murder home, so it couldn't be the home. Well, this home is the murder home because that averted reality allowed Jungsook to live and grow up and to stay in that house where she tortures Soyeon. So that is how I'm going to interpret this ending from probably here on out. I can't say that 100% certain that it couldn't change, but I'm really happy with that as my final thought for this film. And I do think that this is probably some of the most fun that I've had with a film in a long time. So I am definitely going to bump my rating up from an 8.5 to a 9 out of 10. I think this is definitely one of the best Korean thrillers. Not only just that, but one of the best, most enjoyable all around, highly technical, super well acted, visually stunning films that I have seen in a long time. So a 9 out of 10, super solid for me. Borderline masterpiece. Let me know what you guys think of this final analysis, and if you have any concerns or thoughts on my final opinion about the deaths and disappearances. So thanks again, everybody, for watching. This is going to be my final video on The Call for a long time coming. I've got some other videos planned, so please stay tuned for those. As always, please like and subscribe, and until next time, I'm Tyler here at The Movie Beat. Keep watching movies.